Hi everyone, it's Simon Keeling here at weatherweb.net and it's Saturday the 2nd of April. Thanks again for watching. As it's a Saturday, that means this is our Saturday look ahead roundup, which is open access and free to all. So welcome on board if you're not a WeatherWeb Premium member yet. If you're not a member, you can get a free 3-day trial. Just go to weatherweb.net and sign up using PayPal and you'll be able to get your free trial. Or if you prefer, go straight into a 6-month subscription and you'll get a discount for doing that. It's all very easy to do. All you do is click on Premium Member and you just sign up via there. And that means you can be bang up to date with the weather throughout the week. Okay, dealing first of all with the sun, and we've got 3 active regions on the sun. One here, one here, one here at the moment. It's woken up a little bit from last week. We've got another active region as well, just leaving the disk. Still in a relatively quiet period of sunspots, cycle 24. And you can see how this cycle has been quieter than the previous ones, this chart going back to 1978. Of course, you do get periods of activity during the cycles, even the quieter cycles, but notice that we're on this general downward trend. Total solar irradiance looking like this. This goes back to 2003, and we were on an upward trend here from 2010, but things have started to decrease now. Prediction for sunspot numbers as we head into the rest of 2016 is to continue on this downward trend. In terms of the relationship between sunspot numbers and temperature, this is an interesting chart to follow. This is sunspot numbers across the bottom here with the cycles labelled here. Look, 21, 22, 23, 24, going back to 1978. Here's temperature, and you notice that there was an apparent link here for a time. If you look at the 37-month average, these charts, by the way, from Climate for You, you notice there that as we saw a dip in sunspot activity, so we saw a dip in temperature. It kind of got shifted a little bit, went out of phase here in cycle 23. It tried to get going at the end of cycle 23 and again in cycle 24, but really what we've seen during 24, again, it might be down to the fact that it's such a quiet spell, is that the link between temperature and sunspots appears to have been broken. Of course, there are those who argue that that's evidence of man-made climate change. If we just plot temperature again against the sunspots cycles, you'll see here that we've seen this upward trend in temperature and this massive spike that we saw during January and February this year. Notice that while that has increased, sunspot numbers have decreased. And what about sea ice? Well, of course, the Arctic sea ice has made the news this week with claimed record lows in the extent of the sea ice. This is Arctic sea ice this year, and you notice here that it's well lower than average, which is the grey line here, and lower than the previous minimum in 2011-2012. So certainly seen a significant reduction in the Arctic. And looking at the Antarctic, the sea ice extent is closer to average, but still below average even there, which bucks recent trends. This is an interesting chart for sea ice. Again, it's from Climate for You. And notice on the top chart here, the blue dashed line is Northern Hemispheric sea ice extent. The red dashed line is Southern Hemispheric sea ice extent. And just notice how we've seen this decrease. These charts go back to 1979 when the satellite records began. Notice the sharp decrease in Northern Hemispheric sea ice, the slight increase, and actually did speed up a little bit in Southern Hemispheric sea ice overall. And then the bottom chart shows us the global extent of sea ice. And you notice there how that has decreased. But of course, you do have to bear in mind those satellite records only going back to 1979. So effectively 36 years. What about CO2? Well, this is the chart of atmospheric CO2, which is the red line here. This is for Mauna Loa, and you notice how we see that increase there in CO2, the steady increase in CO2, and then underneath is plotted global temperature and a rise in temperature accompanying that rise in CO2, although admittedly as the rise in CO2 has increased, the rise in temperature has not increased at quite the same rate, but still there is that increase there. I have to say it is pretty difficult to argue against that link. Now, as far as last month was concerned, this is the temperature anomaly globally for March 2016. Came in with a figure based on these charts about a plus 7.9 degree. Now, that'll probably be higher than that when the final actual totals come through. This is based on the GFS versus the CFSR as its anomaly program, and generally this underreads by fair margins, but that plus 0.79 degrees is certainly another very warm month globally. How does it compare to last year? Well, last year, March 2015, had a global average anomaly of plus 3.5 degrees. And in March 2014, it was plus 0.3 degrees. With plus 0.19 degrees in March 2013 and plus 0.038 degrees during March 2012. So you see there's been that steady increase in temperature. Now, to some extent, you'd expect that coming off the back of such a warm El Nino. But still, those numbers are enough to set alarm bells ringing. These are the El Nino numbers up to the end of March. Now, don't panic. I know there's lots of numbers on there. Let me just make them a little bit more understandable for you. There's the date, 23rd of March, so that's last week's numbers. Each of these represent an El Nino region. But it's actually this one here, this column, that draws most attention because that's El Nino region 3.4. It shows you the mean temperature across the region, so 28.8 degrees as of the 23rd of March, and then the anomaly in degrees Celsius, which is plus 1.5. But notice how that's come off with a plus 3 degrees on the 25th of November to now be plus 1.5. And the temperature decreased by half a degree up to the 10th of February from the 25th of November, but then it's decreased by a degree, and that acceleration process taking place as El Nino cools and possibly heads into a La Nina. Still so much uncertainty surrounding that one though, but I do think it will go into a weak La Nina. Some models disagree. As far as sea surface temperatures are concerned, the anomaly again showing a big area of cold water in the North Atlantic, extending down as far as the Azores and the Canary Isles, warmer through the mid-Atlantic and through the Southern Atlantic. Here's the remnants of the El Nino, as I say, now cooling off. We've got cooler water in the Northern Pacific, cooler water off the coasts of Asia, but across the Indian Ocean we've got very warm water, and still very warm water too off the east coast of Australia. I think 2016 is going to be so heavily influenced by sea surface temperatures globally that the models, the climate models, are going to struggle with this one, but it's absolutely critical this year in terms of what happens both with the Northern Hemispheric summer and the hurricane season as to how these sea surface temperatures develop. And of course, we're trying to keep you up to date with that here at weatherweb.net. As far as the QBO is concerned, the quasi-biennial oscillation, not so important now that we're coming off the back of winter, but this bottom chart is the more important one in terms of the QBO. You'll hear me talking about this more as we get into the winter months. And what we look for here is for the QBO to go into an easterly phase. When it does that, the weather tends to get cooler, particularly if it does it in the winter months. But we're in a westerly at the moment. The top half of this chart is westerly, the bottom half is easterly, and you notice how we've stayed in that westerly phase. Looks like we're going to go easterly through April and into May. But the link is far weaker as we go through the summer. What it may do is it may hold as an easterly to kick off winter 2016 running into 17, which could make it very interesting through November, December and January. Actually, I'll be working on the winter forecast for some clients this week, and I'll put more about that on WeatherWeb Premium during the coming week. Of course, those are very, very early ideas. Precipitation for March looked like this. Wetter areas across the UK, across northern parts of Spain and into the northwestern parts of France, as you can see there. Drier conditions generally across parts of Scandinavia, Finland, western parts of Russia, but wet as well across Italy and down through the Balkans. Nothing particularly of note. 500 millibar anomalies through March looked like this. You can see there how low they were across southern parts of France, running into eastern parts of Spain. Above normal anomalies up towards the north of Scotland, showing that area of high pressure that built in there. But a real marked anomaly down towards the south, hence the reason for that wet weather across France, Spain, Italy, running down into the Balkans, and dry weather further north, particularly as we've just seen across parts of Scandinavia. As far as what's ahead through April, the CFS still showing us with a trough across particularly the west of the UK during the coming week, keeping conditions pretty unsettled. And actually that's nothing compared to what's coming up through week 2, when we see this low in the heights centred near to Ireland, bringing a much more unsettled week then. Into the third week from the 15th to the 21st of April, stay with the trough across the UK, a mostly east to southeasterly flow. Perhaps keep Scotland on the drier side, but wetter conditions down towards the south and the west. And then headed into week 4. This is when there's much uncertainty over the forecast. CFS now wants to try and keep that trough in place and just keep us with a cool flow throughout April. But we've been hinting at an improvement during this final week of the month, and I think after about 17th, 18th, which should be our focus period, we may find things improving slightly. And that's the focus of our longer ranges and look aheads during the course of this week. Okay, I'll leave you with that for now. Don't forget, if you're not a premium member yet, just go to weatherweb.net, click on premium member, and you can sign up for your free 3-day trial. If you are a premium member, don't forget to check out Gary's fast forecast for the detail for the next couple of days, and the 2-week planner as well for your information for the next couple of weeks. But whatever you're doing, have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Keep the sun shining, and bye for now.